everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Yvonne, and in this episode I briefly want to talk about cultural differences and how they look like in real life. And I'm gonna give two examples. One has to do with racism and the other one has to do with the issue of gays being in the closet. So I grew up in Africa and then I moved to the United States of America. And when I first moved to America, I used to hear people talking about racism. Of course, growing up in Africa, I'd never encountered racism. I didn't know what racism is or how it felt like. So coming to America, I heard a lot about racism. So when I first encountered racism, I didn't know it was racism. Because when you come to America, they do advertise a lot of food and a lot of medication on TV. So I used to see a lot of advertisements about food, McDonald's and all these types of food, Burger King, all these food chains have advertisements on TV. And they would talk a lot about junk food in America and the quality of food. So they used to have a lot of those type of discussions. And with those type of discussions, of course, there was also the issue of, Big Pharma advertises on TV also, and they advertise all this gastrointestinal medication for constipation, for gastro issues, for all types of issues. They do advertise this on TV. So when I encountered racism, at first, because racism, basically, when people are they don't like you for a certain reason, they do have a look. They do have a look, and it looks like a look of disgust. But because I had never encountered that, the thing with that look of disgust is also the same look that somebody who has constipation. It's the same look somebody who has gastrointestinal issues. It's the same look as somebody who is smelling something they don't like. So I could not connect that. It never occurred to me that this is racism. All I thought was it's constipation or gastrointestinal issues, and they keep advertising it and saying people are eating junk food and they're not drinking enough water, they're not doing enough exercises, and just the list goes on of things that they would say. And basically, because of those biases, I concluded that there are very many white people in this America who have constipation issues and gastrointestinal type of issues, and that's why they have all these advertisements. So it never occurred to me that I was encountering racism. And it took me years. And I remember one particular time I was in an elevator with one of my coworkers, and she was black. And this couple came in and they were not happy with us. They were fidgeting and all that stuff. And I remember she looked at me like, "Did you see that?" And I remember looking at her like, "Oh, you saw it too. They have constipation." Also, we were in a hospital, so there was also that. I was like, they have constipation, dude. Like, I'm not sure why both of them have all these gastrointestinal issues, but I was like, in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm not the only one who is seeing all this gastrointestinal issue going on in America. So that's what I thought. And I would watch all these TV shows. They had one on CNN by a guy called Kamau Bell, and he would talk about racism, and they would talk about all this. They had all these shows, and I would watch them. And I used to wonder, I've never met, I used to think to myself, I've never met a racist person, but I've sure met a lot of white people with constipation issues and gastrointestinal issues, indigestion problems, so that's what I used to think. And it took me years of living in America to be able to be like, this person it's not just a look of disgust. It's like they're not comfortable. There's a uncomfortability there, and it took me a while to figure out. Maybe this is what they're calling racism. It's this look of disgust and this feeling of some there's an easiness there. And sometimes it's not just an easiness. Sometimes it's just like this person just doesn't like you. And for me, you know, I was like, if I would encounter somebody I don't like, who doesn't like me, that is, I never had an expectation of everybody liking me. So for me, it was like, I'm just here right now. I'm gonna be gone in like 10 seconds. So I never used to take it to heart. So I would meet with all these racist people and people who are subtle racism, and it never really clicked because I was not raised and conditioned to basically understand racism and to see racism. And I'm saying this to say, when you see people in the West, who grew up in the West, in United States, the UK, Europe, and they talk about racism, it's very easy for them to identify it because they have been conditioned and they have lived. It's their lived experience. For a lot of people in Africa, they really don't understand. Not just Africa, I'm sure even Asia and India, they don't understand what Americans are talking about when they talk about racism. And there's a need of, people like me, I guess, to explain that it's hate, and they hate you because they believe they're superior to you because their skin color. So there is need for that, because a lot of people, I'm sure the same thing with people who grew up in India, in China, all this around the world. People grew up, they have never encountered racism, and they encounter racism when they go to Europe and, to North America, for example. So that's one example to show that some of this diaspora wars, there is an issue there of not, you're looking at the same thing, but you're interpreting it differently. And then the other example is issues that affect gay people. So the issue of gays being in the closet. So of course, when I came to America, there was a lot of gay people would do videos, and they would talk about how they are coming out of the closet. There was like a movement of coming out of the closet. And I used to think it was a physical closet. I was like, these people, their parents used to lock them up in a closet? Like, are you kidding me right now? And then they would say this. This is what they would say. They would say, there are other people, there are so many people in the closet. And I'm like, you don't say. I'm like, then get them out of there. That's what I would think. I'm like, get them out of there. Why are you not helping them get out? Why are you here doing a video, or call the police or something? Because I was like, they're in the closet. Like, I'm sure this is a human rights issue right here. And they would go on and on about, people being in the closet. And then sometimes they would say things like, and there's so many men who are on the DL, on the down low. And then they would talk about these men and how you would know some of these men are on the down low. They would go on these boys trips on a yacht. And then they would go on a yacht. And some of them men who go on these trips, they are married, but they are on the down low. So how I understood that storytelling was, they went to the yacht, and this man, instead of sleeping in the main cabin, they would go to like the base, the basement cabin. That's where they would go to sleep. And I'm like, dude, you grew up in the closet, and then now you're grown up, and then you're going to a boys trip, and then you're sleeping down low in the basement of the boat. Like, dude, it's not necessary. It's not necessary. You can sleep it's okay to sleep in the main, the main cabin area. And I was like, and then they would say things like, they have a lot of money, the gay community has a lot of money. And I'm like, they need to be, has a lot of money. And some of these people who are going in the down low, they have a lot of money. And I'm like, if they have a lot of money, they need to they need to rent a bigger boat, or, sleep at the hotel. Because it never occurred to me what, down low meant. But I just added up, like, if they're in the closet, they're traumatized, and then they came out of the closet, they left other people, and now they're in the yacht with their friends, and now they're not happy. They're sleeping in the basement, in the down low basement. So I completely did not understand basically the storytelling that was going on. But it took me years to figure out what they were talking about, and to understand that in the closet basically means that they don't tell people their sexuality, because of the judgment that comes with that. And some of them, they get disowned by their family members, by their friends, when they come out and tell them about they prefer to date people of the same sex. And when it came to the down low men, I didn't know these are men who are gay men who have married. They have basically conformed to what society wants. They have married, they have children, but they are really not heterosexual men. These are homosexual men who have given into the societal expectations, and hence they have to basically cheat on their spouse with other men or with other women, and that's their down low. So it took me forever to understand that, but I finally got there. But one thing I did get from listening to this coming out of the closet stories was gay people generally need financial independence. A lot of issues facing the gay community can be solved by financial independence of people, and a lot of even women. A lot of women need financial independence, because financial independence, you can walk out of people who disown you. When they say, no, we cannot accept you because of your sexual orientation, you can be like, see ya, deuces, you don't need me, I don't need you too. So I realize a lot of gay issues, and I may be simplifying because they do need therapy. That's another thing they would say, that, oh, they need therapy. They were in the closet, they're out of the closet, and now they are dealing with all these issues. They need therapy. And I'm like, yeah, you need therapy. You are in a physical closet, and now you're sleeping down low inside a yacht. You need therapy. You definitely need therapy. So I'm about to end this video. Thank you for watching this far. But some of the things, the way there's a way of expression, of storytelling that goes on online that can be misunderstood by people who grew up in different cultures and different countries, different environments, because they may actually take some of the things that some of the way the people are expressing themselves. It may be taken at face value. And that's why it's good to show people, for example, if it's exercising, to show them what they need to do. If you're coming out of the closet, like, don't come out. If you're trying to say you're a gay person coming out of the closet, maybe don't walk out of a closet, because they already think you're coming out of the closet. But I'm just saying there's cultural differences at play, even when it comes to some of these diaspora wars that happen between African American and people in the UK, and black people in the UK, or people in Africa. There is a perception issue. They are perceiving situations based on where they come from. That it's not based on what is going on, for example, in North America. They're basing it on their lived experience, for example, in Africa.